Hey, hello guys. Welcome back to the Third Man Cricket Podcast. Here we are, Pavandeep and RaviTeja, back with a new fresh episode. Of course, both of us are very happy, exhilarated, and whatnot. Uh, India has showed up and probably, gave an amazing performance at Lords, and of course reminded us of the 2014 MS days wherein we uh, successfully defended against England, and pretty much a similar feat has taken place again. So of course the first test also pretty much was on India's side, but never nonetheless, it was a great spirited performance, but of course the weather never supported us. So here we are to talk more in depth about these first two tests and also give you a brief preview about how the next three tests are lined up. Of course, Pawandeep Bhaiya will take us through it, and here you go, Pawandeep Bhaiya. Very welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Ravi. Thank you very much. I'm still recovering from that euphoric win that we had a couple of days ago at Lord's, the home of cricket, which turned out to be our third ever win at that very ground, and it was a win to cherish and one for the ages. It's so fascinating that in a span
Mhm.
of 7 to 8 months, we've got such historic test match draws and victories, starting from Sydney, followed by Brisbane, the Gabba, and now Lodge. But all in all, it's been a enthralling series so far with the first couple of test matches done, and India has surely turned out to be the dominant side in both these test matches through the various periods of play. And if we just take the first test match into consideration, played at Nottingham, uh, the Indian bowlers started again exceptionally well and bowled out England on the first day, if I'm not wrong, for 180 odd, and it was only Joe Root standing tall amid the ruins of the England batting. The Indian bowlers were again extremely penetrative, and before the start of the series, we were speaking about how we want just Jasprit Bumrah to hit his straps again post a disappointing World Test Championship final, and that's what great players do. That they make sure that dip in form is just an aberration, and they come back to their normal selves, and that's what we saw from the likes of Bumrah, Shami, Siraj, and Shardul Thakur was also brilliant in that first Test match at the fourth seamer. Uh, and then once India, got on to bat, it was very crucial to overhaul the English target and build up a substantial lead. Um, and they had a good start from the openers as well, which has been our Achilles heel in the overseas conditions for more than a decade now, since the times of Sehwag and Gambhir, and Vijay was holding forth for some time in there in middle. KL Rahul was back to being his best, and he, along with Ravindra Jadeja, had a crucial partnership, uh, along with contributions from the Indian tail, which was a welcome surprise. And we have heard about how they have been working on their batting very seriously in that pre-series camp at Durham. That uh, effort from them was showing in that first test match. And we'll come back to the second test match as well. Important. And then in the second leg, again, it was just a one-man show from England. Joe Root hitting a century. I think it was one of his best test centuries that I have seen personally. He was aggressive right from the get-go. Yeah, to be fair to Indian bowlers, they were a bit fuller, and they erred a bit on the fuller side for a considerable amount of um, Root's early part of the innings. But class players to make use of that, and he was able to forge small partnerships, and they would have been disappointed where the likes of senior pros, Pearstow and Bucker did not do much with that than what was expected in that second leg to present India a very uh, uh, tough target. But nevertheless, I think they were still able to pose the challenge and give India a target of about just over 200. And we know that any anything over 150 in the fourth innings is challenging. Again, the openers gave us a very good start on the fourth evening. Rahul and Rohit were aggressive and showed the kind of intent, and we were almost going at 4 runs per over. And somebody like a Cheteshwar Pujara also showed great intent on that fourth evening. And we were 52 for one, and all of us were hoping for a exhilarating final day and hoping for an Indian win. The weather gods decided to intervene, and there it was, uh, which ended up in a stalemate at Trent Bridge, pretty much like the opening game of the 2014 series, which was more or less played on a very dull surface, more like a road, but pretty much sure that India would have backed themselves to get those 150 odd runs on the last day with 9 wickets in hand, and England would have been the happier side. They're walking away from Trent Bridge with the series still nil-nil. Um, and then we move on to Lords. Uh, England won the toss and chose to bowl. And there were some skeptics questioning the decision of the England captain. And they're saying that he must have taken that decision just on the basis of shower that fallen for half an hour prior to the start of the match. Otherwise, they should have batted. But India took the opportunity with both the hands and again started off brilliantly with a century opening stand. Uh, it's been a long time coming. I don't think we have had a 100 plus run partnership as far as the opening is concerned in the senior countries in more than a decade now. So that was again welcome change. And at the end of the first day, India were 276 for three. Brilliant innings from both Rohit and Rahul. And Rohit Sharma would have been cursing himself to have missed out on the opportunity to get on the Lord's Honour Board. Virat was looking good in his 40 odd on the first day, but very unlike him to throw away the start and not convert it into a big score. Uh, and the questions are arising, when is the 71st century going to come? But I'm pretty much sure it's around the corner, and one good or good couple of hours at the crease, being at his best would resolve that issue very soon. And the only way that England could have come back into the test match after that first day was picking up uh, quick wickets, and that is what they did on second morning. They pretty much dominated the test match on days two, three, and four, I would say. Uh, and again, their talisman skipper did one of the best knocks of his career and scored 180 or odd over there, with the rest of the batsmen giving support to him. And they were able to eke out a lead of only 27. Again, kudos to the Indian bowling lineup. They did not allow the English middle order and the lower middle order, which has been their nemesis in the last series, which was their nemesis in the last series, uh, to repeat that. Um, um, and once England only had 27 run lead, it was going to be a one inning shootout between both teams. Uh, India were in a sort of bother at 50 odd for three in the second innings with the openers and Virat Kohli back in the shed. And that is when the likes of Pujara and Rahane, the crisis men, the men who have been questioned unreasonably, as far as I'm concerned, over their form, when the same yardstick should be applied to the entire batting lineup and not only both of them. Uh, there are some kind of soft targets because of their personalities, I believe. Uh, Decided to dig in and eked out a 100 run partnership, which in the end proved out to be one of the major differences between both teams. Uh, but we lost wickets on the fourth inning, and that slightly put England ahead. And again, it had set up for a fantastic final day, wherein India were 150 runs ahead, with all the hopes pinned on Rishabh Pant to see how he would attack the new ball on the final day and present England with a challenging target. Um, and out of nowhere, he got out early, but what followed was something magical. The hard work that the Islanders have put in the next shore again. Of course, we'll talk about England's tactics later on and how they fell into the hands of the Indians, and we made use of that opportunity. Kudos to Shami and Bumrah for that exhilarating fluctuating partnership of close to 90 runs. And once India had a lead of 270, then there was only one team that could have won the match. That was India, or it could have been a draw. And it was something of a treat to watch the Indian bowlers perform when they knew that they only had 60 overs, two sessions at max to bowl out the English team. And I was pretty confident that they could achieve that because this English batting lineup is very fragile, and they would have hoped that the moment they get Joe Root out early, the rest would crumble like a pack of cards, and that is exactly what happened. And just that energy and passion that was displayed by the entire team, and the on-field antics also, the English provided fuel to that fire, and the Indians came out to bowl. And just that, the way they finished that test match, at the start of the day, people were thinking that it's going to be only an English win or a draw that is in contention, but just goes on to show a good hour in a session turns the tables in a test match, and that's what exactly happened. And the neutral spectators also would have been very, very happy to see a test cricket of such high quality. And all in all, I would say it has spiced up the series, and we look forward to some great cricketing action in the next three series. They have set the ball rolling. Uh, it's going to be a great spectacle to watch for the rest of the English summer. So, all in all, cricket fans do not have much to complain from the couple of test matches. What I would say. What about you, Ravi?
100%. As a cricket fanatic, not just the first test at Nottingham, but also the West Indies Pakistan test also ended on a amazing note. So, of course, indeed, good old test cricket, and every one of us are happy. Coming back to England and how it's been faring for India, 100% completely agree with many points. And especially the second test, what I really like the fact is the fact that all 11 had a very, very crucial role to play at some point or the other. So, okay, of course, there could be some amount of balance in terms of who had a bigger role to play, be it with KL or Siraj or Shami. I mean, the discussion can go on, but what we can, if we just probably, pictorially or something presented, right, there is some amount of a solid balance sitting out there wherein everyone stepped up at some point in time. Pant with his good 60 odd runs and taking and doing some amazing keeping duties right behind. Pujara and Rahane, that partnership, actually, that iconic 100-run partnership, pretty much reminded us of what these both greats of the game, if it's not exaggerating, but at least they truly deserve that title, is what I personally felt, at least on that very moment, because they pretty much stabilized the innings after some faltering. Virat looked very handsome with his 42 odd, very positive intent, but of course, the outside off deliveries, it gets a bit onto the nose for many Virat fans, but it is what it is, because I've seen him comfortably deal outside of deliveries, and when he gets out, it's natural that he could have done much better. But of course, what can be highlighted is that he looked much more in shape, and I hope there's some 71st or 72nd ton. I'm not sure what's the number, but yeah, soon to go. Uh, Even with respect to the bowling department, or even Jaddu's first innings game, uh, the way he is bowled, what you can actually see is all 11 had some or the other role to play at some point in time, and this is what truly defines what this Indian lineup can actually do. uh, Secondly, uh, KL Rahul's 100, Rohit Sharma's start, and of course the batting performances of Shami and Bumrah more than anyone. These are a treat, and I think this test is one test that I probably will definitely going to be talking to our kids and grandchildren and whatnot, and say, okay, that Lord's test was something else. We just had on day five, England were leading in terms of sessions and whatnot. The pie chart pretty much not necessarily looked in India's favor. But day five, our bowlers had different plans with the bat, and our bowlers had different plans with the ball as well. So, very indeed, very happy to see Siraj step up. Virat had I mean, immense hope or faith in him from years. He's been constantly questioned because at least in the limited of four format, he's been constantly leaking runs. But be it in Australia or be it in England now, uh, and also in Chennai. And what we can see is his commitment and love towards the game. So Mohammad Siraj, all Hyderabadis and Indians are proud of you today, and of course, there's a lot more to go from this young lad. So all in all, yes, this Lord's test won't be forgotten for a long time. Of course, coming to the first test, right? Not many pointers here and there. I think 157 to get on day five, with 9 wickets to go in hand. Sorry, with 9 wickets to still go or probably in hand. I think it was advantage India. Nottingham being Nottingham, of course. Never know how the game goes, but nonetheless, I think that was an advantage India situation. And just imagine being 2-0 up in a five-match test series in England. It doesn't happen often, and it's not the Ashes. Australia touring will probably even they struggle a lot many more times. But having said that, it's an very uh, I'll say on the top kind of a situation that India is currently in, and going forward, it's only important for us to kind of take this forward. And I'm pretty sure Virat also mentioned in his press conferences and post match ceremonies that while we'll enjoy the win, what needs to settle down is take a 10-day solid break and get back strong at Leeds as well. So it's going to be interesting. Of course, England are making their changes as well. Vince is apparently called up, David Malan as well. So it will be, I think Mahmood also would be probably, improving their arsenal of fast bowling. Because at some point, I'm not expecting Anderson to play all five tests of this test of the series, but probably same goes with Broad. We're not very sure if he'll still be as fit as expected. So we will be looking at changes, and these changes will be closely looked at because the second test was a very intense test, not just in terms of how the game went. It was definitely not a test wherein, or a game perhaps wherein the sportsman spirit that the so-called English really love, or actually adhere to, or whatever. England press definitely had major concerns with how Virat and boys uh, were on the field. Like how we were discussing, I called them the raging bulls, you call them the pack of wolves, and that truly kind of defined Virat and the rest 10 guys as well. So yes, ECB is focused. They want to make those quick changes so that the next three tests go on, on their side. So pretty much 2014 we were 1-0 up again, and what happened next was a nightmare, wherein we were definitely not in the game any time for that matter. 2018, it doesn't necessarily do justice to what the scoreline suggests, but nonetheless, there were some spirited performance from India, and it was just a stepping stone for that matter. And I think 2021, here we are. England also not necessarily full strength for that matter, but it is what it is. I mean, we couldn't talk about a couple of players who were supposed to be part of the team, but missed out for various reasons, maybe outside of cricket as well. But nonetheless, this is a best chance to actually come back home, defeat undefeated for that matter. Would it be a 3-0 or a 2-0? You know, Time would tell, because the rain is unpredictable, and I'm just not necessarily sure what would necessarily happen in terms of the end result of the game, of the test for that matter. So, yep, that's my 2 cents, Bombay.
Yeah, can't agree more with you, Ravi, on that. Uh, and moving on, I would just like to pick your brains also on what were some bizarre tactics by Joe Root on day five, once the Indian Billionaires came out to bat. Of course, they seem more hell-bent on, uh, you know, taking a sort of a revenge with short pitch bowling against the likes of Bumrah and Shami, keeping in mind what Bumrah had dished out to Anderson on day three when he came out to bat, which was, I think, pretty naive on their part. I mean, we were bowling with a second new ball, which was just 3 or 4 overs old, and you did not have even one slip in place. for Shami and Bumrah and had all these fielders back on the boundary. Such kind of field was not set for Rishabh Pant as well. I mean, you got Rishabh Pant out with a straightforward delivery with a new ball,
Mhm.
and they were just hoping that these tailenders will fall for the bait and will have one mistimed shot in the air, and then that'll be it. Um, and I don't understand the logic behind, feeling offended when you're faced with a bouncer barrage. Gone are those days in the yesterday years where there was an unwritten pact that fast bowlers would not be bowling bouncers to each other. But that is not the case anymore, and there is no love lost between them. So if you're batting against, if a fast bowler is batting against his opposite number, you can expect nothing but hostility. And it was just a sheer coincidence that Jasprit Bumrah bowled a 10 ball over. It was on that particular day he overstepped, I think, 13 times. It was unlike him, and he seemed to be off his rhythm. And they were of the opinion that he was doing that wanted so that he could have more balls at Jimmy Anderson and keep bowling that short stuff, which was very ridiculous to think of because each and every run in this day and age matters in any sort of cricket match, and that one run can be a difference between win or a loss. So why would somebody want to bowl deliberate no balls just to soften up a, a number 11 batsman is just beyond logic. But if you're out there to face the music, you should expect nothing else but full effort from the opposition bowlers to get you out, or just devise a plan to get you out. Bowl short, 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 and then fix in the Yorker. So I think they were looking at that opportunity to get back at Bumrah and Shami in that manner. And I think they lost the plot. I think, in fact, Joe took a book out of Virat Kohli's captaincy a couple of years ago when we have been struggling to get tailenders out, and all Virat Kohli used to do was spread around the field once tailenders came in and just hope to, get a ball in the air and get them caught. And we know of the consequences that India suffered in that 2018 series, especially with Sam Curran and company, did a lot of damage to us. Um, and along with that, Kohli's declaration, a lot of people are aware of the view that why did Kohli declare just a couple of overs after lunch? And even I didn't know. I read a couple of points somewhere, and they were pertinently mentioning in the other podcasts that there is a rule that if you are bowling 60 overs or less in an innings, then the over rate does not come into picture, and that's a ICC ruling actually. And with both the captains being fined heavily for the over rate, Kohli did not want to take a chance, so he wanted to make sure that they at least have 60 or less overs than that. Otherwise, why would you just come back after lunch for a 40 minute after a 40-minute break for a couple of minutes and then you know uh, go back in the shed again? So that was a bit of a clever move, and that did not allow the English openers also to get that much time to think and mentally prepare themselves. So many people are not aware of that. So it was a very tactical move from the Indian team management, so that if there are any overhead issues, Virat Kohli does not get a sanction again, and that will lead him to be banned for the future test matches. So your thoughts on Dude's stay five tactics and Kohli's declaration?
Oh yes. So firstly, on the Kohli declaration piece, yeah, the overrate piece is news to me as well. As in, I came across that in the last few days or so, wherein okay, I wasn't aware of this fact. But nonetheless, I think the other factor being, like you rightly mentioned, is also the mental. Uh, I'll say it's kind of a mental tactic wherein uh, 11 men all on the field go back to lunch together, and necessarily what's in their head is that okay, we got to go out and then break this partnership, which is more than say 60 or 70 runs for that matter. uh, Story coach, it's the shortest story is that they go and just ball just 9 deliveries, and then one delivery just goes on the boundary, and then the captain calls him back. uh, Burns and Sibley run back. Okay, they have to pad up, and then again there are two more overs lost and whatnot. Uh, it's a tricky scene. As in the declaration piece, we are very much tactical. The overrate part is definitely good, but what we also need to understand is that we Indian fans are a bit more critical about few. I mean, the result was on our side. So, had it been a situation where in England were 9 down, probably reminding of Lodge is it wherein Dhoni and Srishant just kind of managed to sneak through, right? If that was a situation, people would have pounced on Virat and you know and kind of pointed fingers at how it could have been a easy declaration because we had enough on the board, and on a day five Lords under clouds, it's just impossible for England to chase down. So it's a story that ended well. So we are kind of delving into uh, probably strategies that have not surfaced earlier. That's my 2 cents on the declaration piece. Thankfully, we were able to pick those 10 wickets, and again, when I say thankfully, uh, Virat had some amount of luck that day because his Butler drop was atrocious. Same goes with Hasib being dropped by Rohit, and thankfully, Hasib Hamid was called leg before by Ishant, and but Butler was there around, constantly, troubling, and it was right in our heads as well because you know I did come across Twitter outrage during the game wherein I've seen that okay, I think we might have just probably we just need to settle for a draw, but nonetheless, Siraj to the rescue, and of course Virat will be playing again. So a lucky day overall. Coming back to the tactics with Bumrah and the short balls, I think it's just ego and pride, and I'll not definitely give it a different name to it, but nonetheless, um, it's switch in music, and people have to when players have to be ready. There's no it's not like there's some amount of sportsmanship lost or something, but bowlers are also expected to defend or slog. Maybe that's one reason they do it, and then not necessarily whine about how it went. And kudos to Bumrah. He handled the situation very well. He happens to be a very calm, sedate person, but nonetheless, even while he was batting, he gave it to Markwood when it was needed. And what I didn't necessarily like was how the umpires reacted. Shami was asked to kind of zip up and shut up and whatnot, but while the major amount of noise was made by the bowlers, be it Anderson or Mark Wood for that matter. So, and I've really liked how Siraj gave it back to Robinson when he was batting, and the whole intensity and aggression was lovely to watch, and it was a treat. It was all in all, it was a treat. The outrage was expected by English media, but yeah, we gave it. And what KL suggested in the post-match interview once he received the Man of the Match award was the fact that if there's one guy who's being targeted, all the rest of the 10 men are going to attack as well. So that speaks volumes of how this team is closely knit. Uh, uh, so that's my 2 cents on this. So Pawan, actually there are a couple of things also which I wanted to ask you. Uh, Again, I think we discussed the might of Indian pace bowling, say under beat under Virat, or how fitness has played a key role, and how we are able to actually go and pick 100 wickets in England, 95, nine, or probably 60 solid wickets in South Africa, testing Australians in Australia. And also to come back to England, where are we on the Ashwin saga as well? Because Ashwin is world number two. There were a lot of eyebrows that were raised, especially during the first test, because Ashwin was more or less a clear certain. But we've taken a gutsy move to not pick him and pick a bowler who's an all-rounder. Now that the tail is responding, now that the tail is wagging, are we looking at somewhere beyond Jadeja, wherein we are resting Jadeja and looking at Ashwin at Leeds? Uh, because Leeds happens to be slightly a spin-friendly pitch. We remember what Stokes did against, and back then as well, target the spinners, or with the spinners did ball that way. Did really ball well there. So the four pace bowling attack, I think, is going to stay here. But I also wanted to know your views on uh, this forcing pace bowling attack, and also the Ashwin saga, because it needs to be addressed sooner or later.
Yeah, absolutely. And just before I move on to that, you were speaking about the verbal altercations that were happening between both the teams. We all know that James Anderson has a history of being pulled up the wrong way and acting, in a grumpy manner. He's called Mr. Grumpy for no reason, in spite of being the most successful fast bowler numerically in the history of the game. He has had his fair share of incidents. Nobody can forget the altercation that he had with Michael Clark in the 2013 Ashes at the Gabba, um, where Michael Clark also was fed up and asked him to be ready for a broken arm. And then he had his altercation in the following year in 2014 with Ravindra Jadeja in Nottingham, I believe it was. Again, got away too see. And in this test match, again in 2016, if I remember, when he toured India, somebody asked him how did he think about the superlative form that Virat Kohli is showing in this series, and he was like, Indian pitches um, make sure that the chinks in his armor are hidden, and it was a befitting reply that once Virat went back in 2018, we all know what kind of series he had then. He was made to shut up his mouth. And in this series also, he has been, um, having those verbal duels with Virat Kohli and the rest of the Indian um, players as well. And I'm pretty much sure something untoward must have been definitely said to Bumrah and Shami by the English bowlers and like for Josh Butler as well. Otherwise, Jasprit Bumrah would be the last person to show any kind of unwanted aggression on the cricket field. And it's great that he channelized that aggression into helping India win that test match. And especially the last thing that anyone would want to do to Virat Kohli is enable him and just give him an extra motivation to come out and um, give his best along with his team. And you could just, you know, notice the kind of body language they had when the English openers uh, were walking out. I don't know if you had listened to his team huddle, but I was watching the Sky Sports broadcast over here in Canada, and
Mhm.
they have a mic up there when the team is, in the huddle just before entering the field, and his words could be clearly heard that, let's make it 60 overs of hell for them over there, and that is what they made. That is what they showed. I mean, I've never seen the Indian team so charged up, and they
Mhm.
were actually like a pack of wolves wanting to hunt their targets down. As soon as Rory Burns played that first ball, you had Rishabh Pant, you had the slips, you had Siraj from mid off, Shami from mid on, Bumrah the bowler in close to the batsman, and I think that was some kind of an intimidation virtually that or bullying that they did. Um, and you would want to want to watch such drama, without which Test cricket would not be fun. But of course, you got to know where the line is, and uh, uh, not cross that line and get personal as well. Um, and that was my thought on that section as we want to wrap it up. And speaking on the four prong pace attack, I mean, how good is the Indian bowling lineup? Um, I think one of the best on par with. I would say it's a close fight between the four prong pace attack of New Zealand and India at this point of time, but two quality attacks. And to also bring in your other question, I think the only reason that Virat Kohli has dropped Ashwin uh, is because he wants the pressure to be relentless on the English batsmen, because if you're playing seamers and two seamers, sorry, three seamers and two spinners, um, and if the conditions are not helpful for spin bowling, then the batsman is going to have that release once the pace bowlers are not bowling from both ends. And once the spinner comes in, they take their chances. Of course, Ashwin is a very skillful bowler and he has the guile to dismiss the batsman in any kind of conditions, and he has been very good overseas in the last couple of years as well. Um, Jadeja, on the other hand, requires more help from the wicket, I would say, than Ashwin to take wickets in overseas conditions, whereas Ashwin has that guile of beating the batsman in the air or, you know, trying various tricks up the sleeve to make something happen. Whereas Jadeja is going to be economical and is going to put ball on that same spot day in and day out. And like in India, once he gets help from the wicket, that makes him doubly dangerous. And the only reason why Jadeja is getting picked up Ashwin in this scenario is to make sure that there is that insurance cover in the batting. There's no debate as to who the better batsman is overall. Ashwin does have test hundreds, but Jadeja can definitely walk into the top six as far as I'm concerned in the Indian Test team. Or
Mhm.
on the basis of his sheer batting at this point of time. And that's the only reason that he's being picked ahead of Ashwin, is what I feel. And as like I mentioned that in the teams of yesteryears, very rarely would you find a bowling attack which would have four seamers and all four of them bowling with the same kind of intensity, and the batsmen would just not get an inch from all four of them. Normally, you would have bowling attacks wherein these are the two main guys. Like currently, India would know that they have to just see off James Anderson in his spells and try to cash in on the other Indian bowlers. But that's not the case with the Indian bowling lineup. You see off Bumrah and Shami, then you've got Ishant and Siraj to contend with, or Shardul, or Umesh. The backup lineup is also such impressive that there's absolutely no let up. And that is one of the main reasons I think they have wanted to go with this four-prong pace attack so that, there is no let up anywhere. And the spinner is just used as a uh, filler sort of a thing, or when conditions demand, he can pitch in and pick up that odd wicket. Um, the tail has delivered with the bat in the first couple of test matches, but still, you know, I would like to give it some time before getting more consistent so that would want to take the punt and then play Ashwin instead of Jadeja. I don't think that's going to happen sooner. Most in a place like Headingley where it's all the more going to be helpful for the seamers. Traditionally has been uh, more helpful. Although India broke the myth last time they played in Headingley in 2002. It's hard to imagine that they're playing in Headingley after 19 years. After that historic good in 2002, they never played at Headingley. Uh, and that victory was achieved in overcast conditions with two spinners, Harbhajan and Anil, and Sourav Ganguly winning the toss on a grayish day on the first day and choosing to bat. And Ian Botham telling him, "Are you out of your mind when you are selected to bat on such a day?" But he proved everybody wrong and he scored more than 700 runs and won by innings. One of the
Mhm.
finest overseas test victories we have had in our history. I don't think that's going to change much in Headingley. I think he might come into contention once we are back in London and playing the fourth test match at the Oval. But I think Ashwin would also understand why he's not part of the playing 11. And I think as long as that communication is there between the captain, coach, and the player, they would definitely understand. Nobody wants to miss out, but such is the competition for spots that, and such is the quality of players that India has at this point of time. Some or the other is going to feel left out. And that was the same thing with that great team of West Indies and Australia. They had so many quality players that it was just impossible to fit everyone into the same 11. And I think Indian cricket has reached that stage at this point of time. They have built so much quality and bench strength as well that it's a good headache to have as to who we want to play. And it's definitely going to be horses for courses kind of thing. And Nishant, he came in for Shardul. I think Shardul would have played this test match if he was fit. So he again offers something with the bat as well, but Nishant again proved his experience. And both the innings, he put crucial breakthroughs. First innings, he got Moeen Ali and Sam Curran out at a very critical time. Then in second innings, we know that he got Hakeeb and uh, Johnny Bearstor out as well. So, uh, yeah, it's a horses for courses policy. Definitely hard done by. And especially Ashwin is at the peak of his powers as far as his bowling is concerned. But there's only so much a captain could do. Of course, the knives will be out if the result, uh, does not go in our favor. But again, it's a double-edged sword with any captaincy decision that you take. If you're praised and taken to the moon and stars if the decision comes off, and it's the other way around when it does not come off. But all in all, I'd say it's a good headache to have for Indian cricket. And one thing you can never predict with such quality of players is the playing 11 is going to be. So as long as they are winning, who cares? So that's my thought on that.
Indeed. So yeah, Headingley third test. Uh, I vividly remember watching 2002 test as an 8-year-old. I have flashes of the memory as well, wherein I think Saurav hits one in the crowd and it hits an old man and he starts bleeding, and Sachin's amazing innings, and how also the way we wrapped up The game, I think Sourav takes a slip catch. I remember this as an 8-year-old kid probably. So of course, very much looking forward to the Headingley Leeds test. It produced a classic in 2019, the Ben Stokes epic game. It's a very cricket friendly stadium as well, and this time it's going to be even more intense, mainly because of what that pretty much the venue has produced. And also, let's not forget, I think Rohit has 100 there in 2019 against Sri Lanka. So we can expect something big this time at Headingley. So any thoughts on the Headingley test? In your views, Pawan, anything that you think that okay, something very peculiar coming up?
Yeah, it's good in a way for England that there's a gap between second and the third test matches because it gives them time to regroup and recover from this shock, I would say, that they have suffered at Lords. It would have been good for the test match to be, you know, nearer from an Indian point of view to carry on that momentum. But nevertheless, Virat Kohli did mention that they're going to enjoy this victory, but not, take their foot off the paddle and, be ruthless in their approach. And that is what we would want to see from them. England have definitely, thought about it and made a couple of changes. They have brought in David Malan and dropped Brom Sibley. Zach Crowley has also made way for, I think, Saqib Mahmood in the lineup. So it remains to be seen how they're going to sort out their batting. It seems to me that uh, Hamid would be, pushed up the order to partner Rory Burns in the opening slot, and then David Milan, number three, Root, and then uh, I'll be very interested to know how they would, pick number five uh, and sixth batsman. Would be Josh Buttler at six, but Johnny Bairstow has not been up to scratch. I think in absence of quality contributions from the top order, people like Bairstow and Butler, who are senior pros, need to take up responsibility and back up and support Joe Root. Dan Lawrence is a quality young player, and so is Ollie Pope. So it remains to be seen whether they decide to take a punt with either of them. I don't think Sam Curran is going to be playing this test match because he's been pretty pedestrian with the ball. Just for that, wicket of Virat Kohli as a silver lining in that test match. Um, James Anderson is again going to be playing. Like you mentioned, I don't see him playing five test matches, but they would more expect more out of Ollie Robinson. And it remains to be seen if Mark Wood is fit because he's the only enforcer of bowler which has kind of pace in their lineup, apart from Jofra Archer. So I think it would be a good thing to give the likes of Saqib Mahmood, or he's an unknown quantity as far as the innings are concerned, and he's a good bowler. Uh, and the conditions will be helpful for him. Moeen Ali again will be there. He's been a thorn in India's side every time they have played in England. So it remains to be seen how they, cope up. I hope it's just not an encore of the 2014 series because in 2014 also in the second test match we had a good victory at Lords and everybody was asking how is England going to come back, and then we had that third test match in Southampton from where the series turned, and we were absolutely crashed in Manchester and over in the fourth and fifth test matches. The third test match, England started tentatively, but they grew in confidence as the game went on. I think it was the test match, and then Pankaj Singh also made his debut and was unlucky. Alistair Cook was dropped, and then we went on to make a century, and then we've got to remain on guard. England can definitely come back in the series by having a couple of good days. And I don't think India would be making any kind of changes in their lineup unless and until they see anything different with respect to their conditions or if there's any other injury concerns that the 11 that played in Lords has. Um, so yeah, it promises to be another enthralling test match that we can look forward to, and hopefully the weather holds good as well up there in north. And hopefully Rohit, as you mentioned, he scored a century last time he was there, and he's yet to score a century outside India in Test cricket. So uh, hopefully he does that and avoids playing those pull shots when fielders are back. I know sometimes it plays on an ego uh, that no matter how many fielders you're going to put there, I'm still going to clear the rope, which he does more often than not with that shot. But sometimes your strength can also be your weakness. So hoping, uh, he's already proved his credentials in the first two test matches. The way he's played the new ball has been absolutely fantastic. That was the last hanging question mark over his test opening batting credentials, and it can't get more tougher than opening in uh, the old blighty, which is England. So I think India would want the middle order to support their openers because in all these while with the last 6 or 7 years, our middle order has been strong and openers have been found wanting. And now it's the other way around in the first couple of test matches. And you can just imagine that if both of those departments click, we'll easily be scoring more than 500 and then our bowlers will more often than not be delivering innings swiftly for the team. So hoping that our batting clicks as a unit and that would just be half the battle game won by us.
Indeed, brilliantly put. Yeah. So, I think pretty much it for this episode. Of course, we'll be back with a lot many more episodes, mainly with respect to the how the Leeds test, and then further at Oval as well. Looking forward. Thanks a lot for your support so far. Any final thoughts, Pawan?
No, I think Ravi, we are all good. And hopefully, I think our next broadcast will be once you have landed over here in Canada as well, and that we can, have a net broadcast with both of us in the same country, although in different provinces. But that'll be fun, and we will actually be the third men of the cricketing world and giving a brief insight into the game that we love from a third man's perspective.
That's right. Two third men, one a bit more square and one probably on the righter side for that matter. Yeah, certainly. So, sure, Conway, and thanks a lot for your time today. And of course, we're going to come with many more conversations about the game that we love. Thanks a lot, everyone. Cheers.